Hello, my name is Sara Hume, and I'm the curator of the Kent State University Museum. I'd like to welcome you to a virtual tour of our latest exhibition, As the World Weds, Global Wedding Traditions. This exhibition showcases our rich and diverse collection of wedding dresses. Wedding dresses are one of the pieces that people are most likely to offer to the museum as a donation. People hold on to their wedding dresses for their lifetime and wish for them to be preserved in a museum. As a result, we have a tremendous wealth of pieces in our collection, and this is a great opportunity to showcase them. As I organized the exhibition, it was important to juxtapose Western and non-Western dresses, rather than separating out pieces that were quote-unquote traditional from those which were quote-unquote fashionable. This organization allows the visitor to see that indeed, even Western dress is subject to tradition, and non-Western dress changes over time. The first section of the exhibition looks at lucky colors and symbols. In cultures around the world, men and women choose outfits for their wedding that ensure that they will have good luck, that ensure happiness, good fortune, long marriages, and fertility. It's customary in the West for women to wear white wedding dresses. This tradition goes back to the days of Queen Victoria, who wore a white satin wedding dress with white lace for her wedding to Prince Albert in 1840. The custom of wearing white actually predated this. It wasn't unheard of for brides at the time in the 19th century to wear white, but when the Queen did it, it really became a tradition. It was really exclusively for women of wealth, though, at this point, because it was quite expensive to have a dress that was only going to be worn on one occasion, and making a white dress was especially expensive. Throughout the 19th century, it was customary for most women to just wear their best dress when they got married, and not worry about wearing a white wedding dress. We have an example in our collection from 1886 of a wedding dress worn by Celia Birdsall when she got married. This was just a plain gray dress. We have not only the dress, we also have a picture of her wearing it. The meaning of white wedding dresses in the West was associated with innocence, purity, and modesty. This association between the color white and virginity meant that it felt inappropriate for brides to wear white on a second wedding. For Joanna Bradbury, when she got married for a second time in 1976, she chose to wear this brown velvet Halston dress with a matching cape. Brides in China and India often wear red as their color, and this color symbolizes success, happiness, and good fortune. We have an example of a sari that was worn by a bride in 1982. The bride's family purchased this material for her when she was only 12 years old, in anticipation of her eventual marriage. In Southeast China and Hong Kong, brides often wear an ensemble known as a longfangua. This two-piece outfit often incorporates the images of dragons and phoenixes. The dragon is associated with male, and the phoenix associated with female, and then the combination of these two mythical figures is deemed appropriate for a wedding. The phoenix is also common in Japanese wedding attire. The piece that we have incorporates two phoenixes, a male and a female. That is very typical for Japanese nuptial garments. Another symbol that's widely associated with Chinese weddings is the double happiness symbol. This is a character which combines the character for happiness 2 times, and thus double happiness. This symbol is used both on garments in the case of the pieces that we have in the exhibit, and it's also included on the walls at venues where weddings take place. The next section of this exhibition is entitled Something Old, Something New. This phrase comes from Old English folktale, and the idea is that the something old and something new is intended to ward off evil spirits or ensure fertility. In many cases, brides will incorporate pieces of family heirlooms as part of their attire on their wedding day. In one example that's included here in the exhibition, we have an example of a chuppah, a Jewish wedding canopy. And the bride, Jen Boroff, included her grandfather's tallit, or prayer shawl, as part of the roof of the canopy. In addition to the chuppah and the wedding dress, we have Jen Boroff's ketubah, which is the wedding contract. This is signed with the bride and groom and the rabbi as part of the wedding ceremony. We have many examples of dresses that were worn by multiple generations of a family. For instance, we have a dress first worn in 1887. And then it was worn again by the original bride's granddaughter in 1945. This is particularly unusual to have a 19th century dress get reworn, as the corsets and bustles and layers of the dress are cumbersome and really changed as fashions went into the 20th century. This dress at the front of the platform was originally worn in 1975, and then the bride's daughter chose to incorporate her mother's dress into her own wedding ensemble. She took the dress to a bridal shop outside of Cleveland that's run by a Kent State University Fashion School alum, Laura Smith. And Smith reworked the dress and made it into something original for the bride in 2017. This striking black dress was a wedding dress for Marie-Catherine Ernst when she got married in 1908. She was from the region called Alsace, which lies between France and Germany. In 1908, when she was married, the region was part of Germany. However, her granddaughter, Georgette, wore this wedding dress again in 1982. For this second wedding, the region was part of France. The large bow is the typical headdress for the region and is closely associated in the public imagination with Alsace. The color of the bow signifies the religion of the wearer. Protestants wear black bows, such as this one, while Catholics wore brightly colored bows of red, plaid, or even floral design. In this case, Marie-Catherine and her granddaughter Georgette are Protestant, as it signified by the bow. The reuse of material also occurred in this example of a wedding dress that we have that was made out of a silk parachute from World War II. The bride's brother served in World War II and brought back this parachute for his sister to get married in. The dress was made by the groom's mother, who crafted this fine silk material into this beautiful wedding dress. The next section of the exhibition looks at dowries and trousseaux. Historically, weddings represent the coming together of two families, and there is a union of their wealth. When a bride brings money and goods into the wedding, that is known as the dowry. In some cultures, it's the custom for the groom's family to provide money and wealth into the arrangement, and this is what's known as the bride's price. In many cultures, the goods that the bride and groom bring into the wedding are in the form of textiles and clothing. When the bride prepares clothing items and textiles to take into the wedding, this is often known as her trousseau. In many cases, women would prepare needlework and household linens to take with them into their wedding. They would often store these goods in a hope chest. The piece on the wall is an example from Japan of what's known as a yogi. It looks like a kimono, but it is actually padded and serves as a form of bedding. These were commonly given as wedding gifts. The technique to create the pattern on it was known as tsutsugaki. This is a resist dye technique in which the textile is painted first with a rice paste and then dyed in indigo. The design that appears on it is a pair of phoenixes, and again, these phoenixes represent male and female and are very typical of wedding gifts in Japan. In Central Asia, textiles are highly prized. An example such as this ikat. Ikat, like the tsutsugaki which you just saw, is another example of a resist tie technique, except in this case, the dyeing takes place before the threads are woven into the textile. The threads are wrapped and bound before being dyed, creating a resist pattern. The robes that are made out of these ikat textiles are highly prized and are included in many times in a young woman's dowry. We also have this example of a wedding dress and trousseau from a wedding that dates to 1919. We have the wedding dress, which is made of cotton and lace, and then a group of items including slips and nighties that were made out of silk and trimmed with lace. We also have a more modest example of a trousseau. In the case of this nightie that was made by a woman in Italy for her wedding night in 1897. Not only did she make the wedding dress, but reportedly she hand spun the cotton herself, and perhaps she even made the lace that is a part of it. The final section in the exhibition looks at how the different participants dressed for their roles. Weddings are attended not just by the bride and groom, but also a whole array of different people, from family members to friends and acquaintances. And each of them wears something special for the occasion. One particular participant in the wedding is the bridesmaid. And historically, bridesmaids would be set apart by their dress. Queen Victoria chose the color white for her attendants to wear. In more recent times, it's typical for the bride to choose a color or even a style of dress for all of her bridesmaids to wear. In the example that we have included in the exhibition, we have a bridesmaid's dress from 1943 in a delicate shade of pink. The dress has prominent shoulders and is created of two contrasting fabrics. Children are also important participants in wedding festivities and often take on roles such as ring bearer or flower girl. We have one dress which was given to us by a donor who participated as a flower girl in her aunt's wedding in the 1930s. The lace and ruffles of the dress do actually evoke wet bridal fashion of the day, but the high waist and the pink color are very typical for children's wear. The parents of the bride and groom also play important roles in this ceremony, and their outfits are chosen with care. In the case of the mother of the bride, it is typical for them to not wish to compete with the bride, but also wear something that's deemed age appropriate. Many times the color choices are in the field of lavender, mauve, gray. Even as early as 1913, as we can see in this example here, the mother of the bride has chosen to wear lavender. This section of the exhibition focuses on wedding ceremonies that occur as a series of events over several days. In Ghana, for instance, it's typical for there to be a number of different ceremonies and different outfits worn for each of these different days. Many times, the bride and groom will wear coordinated outfits. We have one example of that, which is the burgundy and gold outfit worn by the bride and groom. We have another outfit from this same bride and groom, which is made of kente cloth. This textile, which is typical of West Africa, is woven in narrow strips and then assembled into beautiful textiles. The bride and groom would take their textiles to the local tailor or dressmaker to have their outfits custom made for them. It was even customary in the United States for a bride to have a special outfit that she wore the day after her wedding. This was known as the going away or second day dress. We have a number of examples of these pieces in our collection, including one from 1854 of plaid, and then we have another one that's from 100 years later, this beautiful blue wool suit that was part of the bride's trousseau and was designed by Vera Maxwell. The back wall of the gallery showcases how brides and grooms' dress has changed over the centuries. The oldest pieces in the exhibition are these two pieces from the 1850s. The bride wore a dress of white silk trimmed with lace, and you can see this closely follows the styles that were set by Queen Victoria the decade before. The groom wears a frock coat, which was a style of dress which was reasonably formal at the time. We have another couple from about 50 years later, and you can see how changes in fashion have occurred. The groom is wearing white tie and tails, which is the most formal level of dress that a man could wear. In many cases, when invitations for weddings go out, the appropriate attire is specified using menswear, for instance, white tie. And again, this white tie and tails is about as formal as you can get. The bride, in this case that we have from 1904, is wearing a less formal outfit. It's what's known as a lingerie dress. This does not refer to underwear, but it's a style of light cotton or linen dress that would typically be worn for an afternoon party, a party that could be held outdoors in the garden. Her dress is very typical of the time and really reflects the fashion from the turn of the century. You can see the long full skirt that flares towards the hem and the slight puff in the sleeves. The dress from the 1920s really showcases how wedding fashion at the time reflected fashionable dress. The dress incorporates the short hemline and the low waistline that were typical of women's fashions of the day. In contrast, the pearl headdress, the long veil, and the orange blossoms would have been really exclusive to wedding fashion. By the second half of the 20th century, wedding fashion diverged increasingly from regular women's wear. There are a number of features that become hallmarks of wedding fashion that are distinct from other fashions, such as sweetheart necklines, invisible sleeves, long rows of covered buttons. These two examples behind me really showcase how wedding fashion becomes its own thing. You can see the dress from 1948 with its long lace train, and next to it a dress from 1978. And both of these have a number of hallmarks that say wedding and really don't say as much about fashions of the 70s or the 40s. The exhibition also includes a pair of suits worn by a same-sex couple for their wedding, which occurred in the wake of the Supreme Court decision. We also have the robe worn by the judge who officiated. The possibility of same-sex couples really leads to a rethinking of the very heteronormative standards which dominate wedding traditions. Brides and grooms play very clear gender roles, in particular the choice of the white wedding gown, symbolizing purity and modesty. As we move into the 21st century, there's a lot of reason to rethink some of the standards which dominate today's weddings. I hope you've enjoyed this virtual tour of As the World Weds, Global Wedding Traditions. If you're in Kent, please join us in person and come to visit the exhibition, which will be on view until August of 2023. In any case, we hope you're able to enjoy other videos that we have here on our YouTube channel.